Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today we are looking at Neco Chemistry Practical for year 2026. For this year, the sample they give to us is copper sulfate, and the likely ion they will be asking us to test for is copper ion and sulfate ion. Now, the first thing you are expected to do when you are carrying out your qualitative analysis is to dissolve your source sample in water. So our sample C is dissolved in distilled water. And what you are going to see as your observation is that your sample C is a soluble salt. So it will dissolve to form a distinct clear blue solution. And what will be our inference? Because it dissolved, our inference is that our sample C is what? Is a soluble salt. Now, so the next thing that I want to do now is to test for copper ion. Then we will now also test for sulfate ion. Do not forget that anytime we want to test for our cation, we used to use our reagent that we used to use is what? Sodium hydroxide solution and ammonia solution. So what we do in this experiment is that we divided our solution into 3 portions. So the first 2 portions we used to test for our copper ion, and the third portion we used to test for our sulfate ion. So to our first portion, we add sodium hydroxide in drop. If you add your sodium hydroxide in drop, if your observation is blue gelatinous precipitate, there's no other cation that will give us this blue gelatinous precipitate except copper. So if you add sodium hydroxide in drop, your blue gelatinous precipitate is copper that is present. And if you still add your sodium hydroxide in excess to it, your precipitate will still remain insoluble. That means that you are still getting the same observation, which is blue gelatinous precipitate. And note that it's only copper that used to give us blue coloration. It's only copper that gives us what? Blue coloration out of the what? Out of the cation. Now use ammonia solution to confirm for any cation that we are testing for. So if we add sodium hydroxide in drop, what we are going to see is a plain blue gelatinous precipitate. It's still copper that still have this what? Observation. But when we add ammonia in drop, it will be pale blue. But when you add sodium hydroxide in drop, it's what? It's only blue. So that's the only difference. But it's still blue. So it's pale blue gelatinous precipitate. Now, what is present? Copper. Don't forget, I said it's only copper that only have what? Blue coloration. Now, when you now add in excess, if you add excess of ammonia to your test sample, your precipitate will dissolve to give you a deep blue solution. And this is a confirmation for copper that copper is the actual cation that is present in our salt sample. So you will see that everything is talking about blue. So n that will give you a blue coloration is what? Is copper. It's only copper that will give us what? Blue coloration as our observation. And don't forget that in the examination, they will give you the inference, ask you to supply the observation, or they give you the observation and the inference, ask you to supply the test that will give you the observation and the inference. So you have to just go through this table, and whatever they ask you to supply, you give to them in the examination hall. Let's go to how to test for our sulfate ion. Now, let's come to how to test for our sulfate ion. We have tested for our copper ion. Now, if you want to test for our sulfate ion, the reagent that we used to use is barium chloride solution and dilute HCl. So to our third portion, now I said that our test sample we divided into 3 portions. So the third portion we want to use to test for sulfate ion. So if you add barium chloride to your third portion, your observation will be white precipitate. And the likely ion that will give you white precipitate when you add barium chloride to your test sample, and you have a white precipitate, these are likely ion that will give you this observation. Your sulfate ion, your CO32 minus, your CO32 minus, and your H2 minus. But what we want to test for out of these 4 ion is sulfate ion. So what do? We had dilute HCl. If we had dilute HCl and the observation we got here is see that the white precipitate still remain insoluble, it is sulfate ion that is present. Because if it's for SO3 or SO2 that is present, the precipitate will dissolve. But if it's for SO4 2 minus, the white precipitate will not dissolve, it will remain insoluble. And that is confirmation confirmation for that SO4 2 minus is the one that is present. But if it's SO3 or CO3 2 minus, the precipitate what will dissolve. So that is the differences. So here, this conversion test for our solvent ion, the precipitate will remain what insoluble. And that has brought us to the end of the test that will be asked in your examination hall. Just know that your examination hall, there will be some spaces. So you have to know that anytime you see a test talking about BMPL and ACL, what one test for is what? Is S for 2 minus. So if they can give you the observation and the inference, ask you to supply the test. And you go test for your copper ion. They'll be hiding sodium hydroxide and ammonia solution. So there are things that the clue that you need for your examination. Please do not forget to like this video, comment, and do not forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel of this test. I'll still come back here to this question on quantitative analysis, which is talking about our titration experiment. Thank you.